Hello there, welcome to Lesson 2, Layout of the Illustrator software. I'm going to start this demonstration by going into Adobe Illustrator. When you first launch Adobe Illustrator, you will probably get a window that says New Document at the top. This is where you decide on the size and the orientation of your first document. There's a number of different settings that you can play with here. Most of these you will not need to worry about. For your basic settings, stick to inches as your units. You do have other options, but unless you're very familiar with working with one of these other units, inches is the one that we tend to use. I'm going to go with a standard portrait layout. Landscape is the other orientation that you might choose to use for some of your pieces. And I'm going to go with a standard letter size 8.5 by 11-inch page. Okay, you can give it a name now if you wish, or when you save it for the first time, you can give it a name at that point. And you do want to stick with one artboard at this stage. You can go ahead and click OK, and it will open up your new document with the artboard in the center. Now, before we start going into too many details, I want to show you guys the layout of the program, just to get you familiar with what it is that you're looking at. It looks pretty confusing when you first sit down. There's a lot of things on this screen. They've done a lot over the last two upgrades to the software to kind of maximize your screen real estate and really get everything organized in as good of a way as they possibly can. And it's a big difference from, say, CS3 to CS5. CS4 and CS5 do have a lot of similarities, and you'll probably see almost the identical screen if you're using CS4. At any point in time while you are working, you can always do a search for something. You can go under Help. You can also do an internet search using your browser and do a specific search for Adobe Illustrator pen tool, for instance. There's a lot of different help kind of sources out on the internet. There's blogs, there's chat rooms, there's of course the Adobe chat rooms and assistance programs, and Apple Computer also has quite a few dedicated to Adobe products, and all of those can be helpful to you. You should also have gotten the software manual or the Peach Pit Press manual for Adobe Illustrator, either CS4 or CS5, depending on what version of the software you are using. And those are all really good sources of information. Most of these demos, there will be 10 lessons on using Illustrator, and there'll be 5 lessons on applying those demos to create graphics. But most of these lessons are taking about the first 15 or so chapters of the software manuals that you have. So these are kind of accelerated versions of what's in the textbook. So if I go a little too fast, if you're not sure what I'm saying or how to do something, you may also want to refer to the book and get additional assistance that way. If you're still having trouble, please let me know so I can help you. I can send you a demo such as these, or we can work out some other way of helping you. I'm just going to get rid of that just so you guys are probably not seeing that at stage. Alright, so this is Adobe Illustrator. Over on the left you probably have your toolbox, and this is where a good chunk of your time will be spent. These are all your individual tools, and on some of these tools you'll have a little black triangle in the lower right hand corner, and if you click on those there are a number of sub-tools. And when we start using a pen tool, for instance, you may want to do what's called tear off, which is tearing off this to become kind of a mini tool menu. You don't have to do this, but it certainly makes it a little bit quicker. And again, you just come over here, tear off, and you're good to go. And if you ever want to close these windows, of course you just close them. So these are all the different tools. We'll probably only use about half of these tools. Illustrator is a massive, massive program, and most people do not need to use everything in there just for creating simple graphics like what we're going to be doing this semester. There are a number of tools in here which really only high-level illustrators start to use. So I probably only use about 2/3 of this program at this stage. There's a lot of things in here I have yet to play with, but there's some great potential with this program, and it's really a lot of fun to work with once you get used to the initial kind of learning curve, once you get past that learning curve. Alright, so with your new document, of course, you do have your artboard. Now your artboard confines the space of your document, and whatever you create that you put within the artboard is what will be printed or what will be put into a PDF file when you output it in one of those two ways. So if you want something to show up on a print or show up in a PDF file, which you'll be sharing with your classmates and myself, make sure it lies within your artboard. And the size of this artboard was determined when I typed in the 8.5 by 11 inches on the new document window. Okay, you have your toolbox with all your tools. You also have your color selection at the bottom. Your color selection has a fill and also has a stroke. And you can click between these two. You can also use, in the case of Macs, you can use X on your keyboard to toggle between the two. And you also have no color options. And over on the far right, you have all your palettes. And one of these palettes is, of course, your color guide. And you also have your color shades and tints. And you can also open up swatches, which we'll get to a little bit later. There's a lot of different ways of doing things within Illustrator, and I'm going to show you one or two ways to do these things. If you discover another method of doing something, you're very welcome to use that. If you have a friend that has shown you another way of doing something, that's certainly fine as well. I'm going to close those down for a minute. Okay, at the top, of course, you do have your pull-down menus. Okay, and again, there's many things in here you'll be using, but there's quite a few you won't be using. Under Object, we'll use a large portion of these. Type, Select, Effect, we'll be using quite a few of these. There's all kinds of fun things you can do with these objects once you create them. Won't be using too many under View. And Window is where all the windows or all the different ways of affecting objects come up. These are the ways to get into the windows from the menus, but most of these are also contained over here. And we'll get into how to do that in just a little bit. If you are working and at any point in time you discover that you have lost a menu or lost a window, your swatches maybe has disappeared, whatever the case is, you probably have just changed the workspace. And there are basic kind of workspace settings that you can use. So if you ever lose parts of the program that you can't get back, go up to Workspace and go down to Essentials. And this just gives you the basic program. And you'll see that I had a few more things pop up over here that I didn't already have. So again, that's Windows, Workspace, Essentials. Okay, you can also arrange your windows as you like, and as you work with Illustrator you'll get more comfortable with how it works, and you'll have preferences that will start coming up. A couple preferences that I have: I always like to keep my navigator on. This allows me to zoom in and out and to move around my page much more easily. And I also tend to keep Pathfinder on because I use these tools quite a bit. And you can dock these as well so that they kind of snap together, but I do use these quite often. And you'll see other tabs come up with these. This Transform, Align, and Pathfinder all pop up together, and Navigator and Info pop up together. And this is one way of zooming in and out of your page and moving around your page. So these are just ones that I prefer to leave on. I also always like to go under View, and I turn on my grid. Grid helps me aligning objects. It helps me see the sizing of my objects, the orientation of my objects, things like that. I just prefer to leave it on. This is not going to print, but you do see it while you were working. So I really like to leave that. You can also go up under View and you can turn on Smart Guides. The default setting is on, so you might see a little check mark there anyway. I leave my Smart Guides on, and at some point I will show you how to change those Smart Guides, but the default guides usually work for most everybody. As we're working with Illustrator, there are a number of keyboard shortcuts that you might want to use. I will try to minimize those simply because you guys can't see me do a keyboard shortcut, so I will try to use the drop-down menus as much as I can. But there are a lot of keyboard shortcuts such as grouping and saving and undoing that I will use a keyboard shortcut for. So there is a list of keyboard shortcuts in the back of your software manual. You can also go online and do a search for Adobe Illustrator CS5 keyboard shortcuts. And a lot of those shortcuts can save you a lot of time when you're working. So there are a couple that I will use. Grouping is one I use. Saving, which is Apple S. I use X, which is toggling between the two colors, as I showed you a few minutes ago. There's a few that I use. And as you rest on these things, you'll see the X come up next to the word stroke there. That's giving you the keyboard shortcut for that. Okay, you also see Selection Tool, which is one we'll be using a lot. That has a keyboard shortcut of V. Okay, so if you ever see me do something, or not do something, but say I'm doing something, I'm using a keyboard shortcut. But I will try to minimize those for you. Alright, that is the end of Lesson 2. For the next lesson, we will start using these tools to actually create some objects. And I'm going to start right here. So if you are going to carry on with Lesson 3 right now, just leave your page as it is.